All right, it is the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and get started here. My name is Joshua Demetri. I am a software development manager at Valiantys. I'll be here to kind of talk through Atlassian Rovo and how it ties into Atlassian products, Atlassian Intelligence, and AI as a whole in our organization. Start with an introduction a little bit. So if you have not heard of Valiantys, you may be familiar with Glintech. Glintech is a part of Valiantys, and Valiantys being the global entity for our solutions partner that exists in this region as well as others. So I come from our North America region, and we are part of that global solutions partner to provide webinars like this, but also to provide effort across the globe for Atlassian products. So let's go ahead and kind of start with a little bit about Glintech and Valiantys by virtue of that. So we offer services in many areas, so not just around Rovo, but training like the webinar that you are attending currently, cloud migration, managed services, agile practice, consulting, and licensing. There's a lot that we offer. Basically, anything to do with Atlassian products and Atlassian consulting, we can offer. So a lot to what we can do with Glintech and Valiantys. Here are some of the credentials for Glintech. If you want to look over those, I won't bore you too much with going through those, but there's a lot of these in here and some Partner of the Year awards and a couple different services to outline some of the things that Glintech can offer. So, cloud review services, robo implementations, training and support, a lot of the things that we saw in that previous slide. So these are going to be areas where we can provide help to your organization of any size, whether it is, assessing your cloud architecture, doing cloud migration, training and support, or as we're talking about today, Rovo implementation and seeing where AI and Rovo can fit into your organization. So let's go ahead and kind of jump right into a little bit of the context here. So the starting point here, I'm going to jump right into it, is this connected enterprise with Atlassian slide. And you'll notice that Rovo is actually nowhere on here. The reason why I start from this slide and this diagram is because I want to kind of set the stage for what Rovo is going to be fitting into in our organization. So looking at this structure and this architecture, this is a diagram that I use for a lot of different things, and it kind of shows the cloud architecture of how everything connects to Atlassian products. And I want to talk through some of the pieces of this, talk through how it creates the overall cloud vision for Atlassian cloud products. But then I also want to, in the next slide, show how Rovo fits into it. So looking at this diagram a bit, there are three main sections. The blue section being Atlassian products. So this is your Atlassian Jira, Confluence, Atlassian Intelligence as well, Jira Align, Enterprise Insights, Atlassian Analytics, all of these different products. Anything that Atlassian currently has or will have, this kind of goes in that box, right? It is all of the cloud products from Atlassian and how they connect to each other. Now, we also have the red and green boxes, the red being anything that is custom built tooling within the organizations. This is things that are outside of your Jira products that you've built. So a lot of larger organizations, we're going to have some custom scripts. We're going to have custom dashboards, maybe Tableau or Power BI dashboards. We're going to have integrations with external systems. There's going to be a lot of things outside of just the Atlassian tools. And it's going to be important when we talk about building a truly connected enterprise architecture that we're going to have connections to those data points that live outside of our Atlassian tools. The last box is that green box with external applications. So this is things like maybe Google Drive or Slack or kind of the other tools that you use, other SaaS products that have data that you might want to operate on, but you don't necessarily have them directly connected today into your Atlassian suite of products. Now, the one thing I'm going to talk about that we'll kind of just scratch the surface of in this webinar, in this diagram, is this piece right here, which is Forge. So that's in the middle, kind of in that blue box, but it's the connection point for everything in the customer tooling and applications section. So Forge, if you have not heard of it, is the developer platform for Atlassian. I'm not going to go, all the way into what Forge does and all the different intricate pieces of it, but essentially Forge allows us to build custom software, custom solutions on top of Atlassian products. So where Atlassian products and the cloud infrastructure built by those products sets the stage and builds the platform for us to build our processes on top of, Forge allows us to extend the features into our own custom processes. It also, in this case, allows us to connect to our internal tooling and applications and other SaaS products and essentially anything that we want to get access to that is not directly in our Atlassian products. Forge Connect as the connection point for that data and for that process. It can also be used to just build full-scale front-end or full-stack architected applications. That's something that we do at Valiantys quite a lot, as we use Forge to build a lot of these custom solutions. And the reason why I'm talking about that here is because it will play a role with Rovo in the next couple slides and throughout the presentation. So I just wanted to introduce you to that concept. Like I said, Forge is a huge topic. We're not going to really get all the way into Forge, but as long as we understand that Forge is the developer platform for Atlassian, it allows us to extend the product's feature set with custom development and tooling. So that kind of gives us this scope of this diagram here, right? We are looking at our cloud architecture where we have all of our Atlassian products, but we use Forge to connect that to our own internal tooling along with other SaaS products. So the question comes up here then, where does Rovo fit in? Because this feels like a pretty complete picture and when you look at it, right? It has all the Atlassian products along with all of the external tools, it's connecting everything through Forge. Where does Rovo fit into that equation? And that's where our next slide is going to come from. So this is the same diagram, but shifted around a little bit to include Rovo and kind of break things out in a way that allows us to introduce what Rovo is, talk about, what are the components of Rovo, and how does it connect to that overall cloud architecture. So looking at this diagram, all the way on the left, we still have those same products that we saw from Atlassian. What we've now done is broken out two different areas, also in blue boxes, so also Atlassian products. Forge being that developer platform that we just talked about, and Rovo being the tool that this webinar is going to be focusing on. So Rovo in this instance is also acting as a bit of a connector for our external tooling. There are three main components of Rovo, and I want to talk about them in context of what we're seeing here. And we're going to dig into each of those different contexts. But what I want to point out with this diagram is that Rovo, along with Forge, acts as a kind of connector to the rest of your organization. And it uses AI to kind of fill in the gaps where we weren't able to either do automated actions or attach to certain data or get certain insights off of that data. And Rovo acts as that connection piece. So the three main areas of Rovo, as you can see in this diagram, are search, chat, and agents. And I'm going to spend a good chunk of time here talking about each of those three and talk about the value that they bring to our organization and kind of to our Rovo implementation. But I want to give a brief intro to how they tie into this diagram first. So search is kind of our most simple to execute feature, at least in implementation standpoint. Search allows you to basically search across all of your data. It is both Atlassian data and non-Atlassian data, as we'll see in a second. And search kind of lives here to allow us to find information quickly. So search being the first part of Rovo allows us to find information quickly. The next piece of Rovo that we're going to be talking about is Rovo Chat. Chat is going to be where kind of all the alarm bells go off on the head of this looks like ChatGPT, and I know what that looks like. And I'm going to talk through a little bit of why it's not exactly the same as that and the benefit that chat has over a tool like ChatGPT when it comes to integration to your data. But that's essentially where we can send prompts to Rovo and get a response, and that response is going to have some knowledge about our data. Now, agents, as you can see, has a line going to Forge. This is because agents are going to be where we take it to kind of a further extent. And agents allow us to create some actions that can be done on behalf of a user, or some automated processes, or maybe a chatbot that is a little bit more specific or has more context. And agents are going to allow us to customize the way that we use Rovo to exactly what we need in each of our teams. And one of the ways that we can do that is through Forge. There are also going to be ways through the UI directly without needing to develop anything that we can use agents as well. And I will show examples of those and kind of talk through that as well. So I know this is kind of a quick overview of our cloud architecture. I wanted to get through that context so that we can talk about the content of each of these three sections with some of the backing of where it's going to fit into our cloud architecture. So this is going to be the foundation for what we're trying to accomplish with the tools that we're talking about in the next couple slides. All right, so moving on, let's kind of dig into each of those three sections a little bit more. So Rovo Search. Rovo Search, like I said, is how we're going to find information more quickly and more effectively. The really cool thing about Rovo Search is that it is a unified search across the entire enterprise. Now, what that means is it is not just a Jira search, it is not just a Confluence search, and it's also not just an Atlassian search. So basically, we're going to have a single search bar that's going to allow us to search all of our Atlassian data across all Atlassian products, along with data from external connections. So that could be things like Google Drive, it could be things like Slack, or any number of other tools. And there are some built-in connections that we have access to through Rovo that allow us to basically have a single search bar for all of the data across our organization and get that information quickly. We can do some filtering. We can go straight to chat from that information and get insights off of that data. It's very powerful and allows us to find that information quickly in order for us to be able to action on that effectively. Another thing to look out for with Rovo Chat, or with Rovo Search rather, there's actually a Chrome extension that you can get for Rovo Search, where you can actually have Rovo Search overlay on anything you're looking at in your browser and search and like cross-reference search information from the screen you're looking at to things that are part of your connections in Rovo Search. So it's really powerful. Lots of things to explore there. This is one that will really make sense immediately. When you turn on Rovo in your instance, you go to search, you add some connections, and you type in a search query, you automatically will get results from all of those different sources. And it's pretty clear the value of that once you start to implement it. This is one that basically you already have the data there, data exists, connected all into Rovo, and you can search across the entire platform. So going from there, we can talk about Rovo Chat because Rovo Chat is also going to benefit from those connections. So Rovo Chat is, like I said, where we're going to see, oh, this looks like, Chat GPT and kind of has that same sort of structure. And, we're not wrong there that the structure is very similar. It's a chat bot. That's kind of the, original way that we are used to interacting with AI from the past couple of years. But the difference for Rovo Chat is that Rovo is going to be based off of the data in your instance. This is where Rovo can give you contextualized responses based off of what is actually in your instance, in your knowledge base, in your Jira projects, along with what is in those connections. So let's say you have some documentation in Google Drive, and in that Google Drive documentation, you outline some of the requirements for a particular project. And that project has a Jira project with some tickets in the backlog. You could ask chat something like, hey, can you tell me what I'm missing from my backlog based off of the notes I have in Google Drive? And it would be able to actually search the documentation in Google Drive, figure out, oh, maybe I need this feature that's not actually outlined in any sort of task in the backlog. That says to me that I need to create that ticket. And then that chat bot will respond with that as a result and pass that on to me. It also just allows us to ask questions about the data in our Atlassian products. So the screenshot here is, what should I work on next? So maybe it has some idea of all the projects that you are assigned to, that you have issues assigned to you in, and it'll give you an idea based on those priorities, which one to work on next. So it allows you to kind of find information faster, but really with the purpose of giving you insights on that data so you can quickly take action on it. Really cool thing about chat that we'll see a little bit later when I do some demos on this product is that chat will also allow us to see the references that it used. So if you go kind of scroll to the bottom of a chat prompt, it'll usually tell you and give you a link to the documentation it actually found, including links to documentation that exists in external tools like Google Drive, as that example was about. It would actually have a Google Drive link to the document that it pulled that information from, which is really cool and helpful as you're trying to kind of gather that information and use it to move forward. All right, so we've talked about search, we've talked about chat, and we're going to demo those in a bit. But one more thing we want to talk about before we get into those demos is talking about Rovo agents. So Rovo agents is that third part of the equation. This is going to be what I think is one of the more exciting pieces of it, because this is where we can take the possibilities and extend them to new heights, essentially, right? We're talking about creating custom chatbots, but also creating automations that run with AI as part of the process. And essentially, we're using AI as a teammate that is going to be able to understand pretty complex tasks. So there are going to be a couple different things we want to talk through with Rovo agents. First of all, is that there are a couple different ways to approach creating a Rovo agent. I alluded to this a little bit earlier when we were talking about Forge and how Rovo ties into Forge, but I want to get into that a little bit more here and talk about those two main ways to create a Rovo agent. The first one is through the UI. And through the UI, which I'll show you in a second, we're going to be able to basically create a new agent, assign it a prompt, and give it some information about how to handle things and tell it what actions it's able to take. Essentially, you can create a custom chatbot directly through the UI in your Atlassian suite of products in Atlassian Cloud. That's the first way to do it. The second way to create a robo agent is through Forge. So there are kind of two different ways that you might want to create them there. The first one being the UI, because you have maybe simpler tasks where it stays entirely in Atlassian tools, or Forge, which is when you extend to actions needing to be taken on external products. So chat and search have the access to those connections, right? So let's say I have Google Drive and I want to be able to get some information off Google Drive based off of that context. I can do that in chat and I can do that in search, but what it's not doing yet is actually taking action and causing functionality to be hit for external tooling. Let's say I want to, whenever you ask a particular question in chat, I want it to go off and create some sort of note in a note-taking app somewhere else, or I want it to go create a new vacation request when somebody requests vacation through the chat portal in some other tool that's tracking our vacation days. There are endless possibilities with that, but Forge allows us to basically extend what we can do with robo agents into basically infinite possibilities. We can just create a block of code that we would write like any other software development, and it can go off and do any sort of task with any sort of other tool, or just do more complex operations within itself to give you better responses. So I will show an example of that as well, but those are the two main ways to create a robo agent. Now, these screenshots that are on here are also outlining the ways to use a robo agent, and there are going to be two main ways as well to use a robo agent as of today. The first way to utilize a robo agent is the basic one that we've been talking about, which is through the chat. So when you build an agent, it shows up as another option in the drop down on the top left of your chat window for Rovo. So you're going to go into your chat screen, as I'll show in the demo here in a second. And in the dropdown, you can select, in this case, I have an example of a legal assistant. And this legal assistant is designed to help me get more information about the legal cases happening within a project. This is a JSM project that I built this for. And that agent is essentially like chat, but on top of chat, it has some information about how to correctly prioritize tasks and how to correctly give me context for that, legal assistant type of task. That's the first way to interact with that agent. The second way is through automations. This is probably my favorite feature to date from Rovo. It is using a Rovo agent as part of an automation, where with our already, a very powerful suite of tools in automations, and if you've never used automations in Atlassian Cloud products, you should really give it a try. They're very powerful and getting better and better as time goes on. But one of the ways that we can interact with agents now is through that automation. So as part of an automation, I can send a prompt to a robo agent and use that response. You can see down here, I have agent response as a value that I can access. And I can use that response to determine how to take action on that particular automation. So in this case, I'm going to be using it to prioritize issues, and I'll show that example in a demo here in a second. But agents through automations is a really cool feature and opens up a lot of possibilities. So agents in general are going to give us ways to use AI as a teammate, and we're going to have some low-touch automated actions with AI through this automations interface. And Forge gives us infinite possibilities for what we can do in and out of the Atlassian suite of products with Rovo, kind of tying all of those things together. All right, so let's go ahead and take a closer look here and actually get into some demos. I just want to show you what this looks like so that we can kind of take it out of the theoretical realm and into really looking at some demos. So let me go ahead and pull up a project here. This is a JSM project for that legal assistant that I was talking about. It's legal team 1. So I built this as a demo for a legal firm that wanted to understand how Rovo could benefit their day-to-day activities. So I basically mocked out what it might look like for them to have a project that is managing the requests for a bunch of different cases. So this is a legal team that gets requests for various different cases they are working on to accomplish certain tasks on that project or on those cases. What I'm going to do to kind of demonstrate the agent that I built here is go to this top right corner where I have this chat button. So this is where you access chat. And from chat here, you'll notice that, first of all, this is just kind of the main chat window that I have, and that's available right off of the bat. What I can also do, though, is in my dropdown, you'll see that legal assistant is an agent that I can select. So Legal Assistant is a custom agent that I built. So I did this through the UI, and I'll actually show you how I built this in a second here. But Legal Assistant, like I was talking about before, is basically intended to help me understand what all of the tasks for a particular case are going to be for, right? So let's say I am looking through this and I just need to know about the Smith case. I don't need to know about any of the other cases that are in here. There's the Jones case, the Hernandez case. There are all these different cases being managed in the same project. Let's say that the support staff doesn't necessarily categorize those 100% of the time, or maybe there just isn't a tool to do that effectively. But I want to just know what is the next thing that I should be working on if I'm working on the Smith case. And with this legal assistant, I can go and say, help me, if I can spell correctly today, help me with the Smith case. And what it's going to do is it's going to use the prompt that I gave it, that I'll show you here in a second, to go through and figure out what are the tasks that have to do with the Smith case. So as you'll see, it's kind of giving me this output where it says review contract for the Smith case, gives me a link directly to that ticket. And then there's this other one that is check progress on obtaining medical records for the Smith case as well. And you'll notice it actually also says at the bottom that for prioritization, the contract review task should take first priority since the contract is needed to continue other work. So I've actually told this agent to always prioritize anything that has the word contract in it. And that was from the perspective of a legal team that knows that in order to continue work, they need to have a contract signed. So it's always going to prioritize that they have anything as the contract at the highest priority. And you'll notice that the priorities are actually the same between these two tickets, but because of the word contract being in the summary here, it has the ability to prioritize that based on the context that I gave it. So that's an example of using the chat to interact with an agent, but I do want to show you what that agent actually looks like and how we actually can create an agent like the legal assistant. So let's go here and show that. This is actually the Rovo product page itself. So you access this by going into your product selection and actually selecting Rovo. And from there, what you're able to do is either just start chats with different agents. You can access search from here as well. So this is where you get to search. Or I can go in here to my agents and hit browse agents, see everything that I have access to. And maybe I want to go to my legal assistant and edit that agent or view that agent. So I can hit edit agent here. It's going to pull me into the UI for creating an agent. And what you'll notice is I have my summary, but I also have the prompt itself. So this is what I added as the prompt to make that agent work the way that it does. I actually just was able to say you're an assistant to a legal team helping summarize the open task for a given case. When you're given a prompt, you can expect to receive the name of the case being asked about as an input. Do not proceed until you've been given the name of the case. Format of the case name should be last name. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but you get the idea, right? So I'm going through here and telling it exactly how to expect things. It actually took maybe a couple of hours to get this refined enough, and then over the course of a couple of days and kind of week to week, as I've been using this for demos, I've been changing it up to slowly refine it. As we can kind of see with a lot of AI tools, the exact way that you ask questions is going to change how it responds. But over time, as I've kind of fixed some of the inconsistencies and added in different parts of the equation of the prompt to help it understand how to respond correctly, it's gotten to be pretty successful at responding every time with what I expected to give back. This is also where I gave it the prioritization idea. So whenever a contract is needed, then it's going to give it a higher priority. So if I were to actually ask it directly, what should I work on first, it would give me that task with the priority based on the contract. You'll also see that down here, we do have actions, and we also have a knowledge base that we can narrow down. So knowledge is the first area. So you can actually tell it what it has access to. So from this agent, if I also want it to, let's say, search Google Drive, I can check this box and it'll be able to go and search Google Drive as well. I've actually only given it access to that Legal Team 1 project. It's really only for that project, so I don't need to give it access to more things. But I can just give it a list of projects and tell it what to access. Same for Spaces and Confluence. So let's say I wanted my legal assistant to understand priority, but based off of things that are listed in the Confluence space for that team. I could do that as well. And then actions are going to be how we actually take action on that information. So let's say I wanted to go a little bit further, and rather than just giving me the information about the case, I wanted to actually set the priority, or I wanted to move the next task into the status that makes sense to start working on it. I can add actions for any type of action I want to do on my Atlassian tools. So this is where we can kind of go through and kind of supercharge that agent to be able to actually take action on our behalf as a user and as the AI kind of taking action for us. So this is how we create an agent with the UI. You'll notice that if I go and come in here and I can create a new agent, I'll get the same interface showing up for that. The only difference here is that you'll notice that it has this like message screen to start. You can actually create an agent just by giving it a prompt and telling it what agent to create. I usually go to this manual screen. This is where you see the screen I had before, and you can create an agent from there. So that's going to be where we can do that from. That was that first way of creating an agent from the UI, and we're going to be able to build it that way. Now, what I want to do as well is show you the other way that we can create an agent, right? So we're talking about creation of agents here. We're talking about how we can build these tools. And we talked about two major ways that we can do that, the UI and through Forge. So I do want to walk through how to create an agent with Forge and what that looks like. That does mean I'm going to show a little bit of the code behind it, but bear with me, I'm not going to actually show anything too complicated. And I am showing it actually intentionally to show how simple it is to set up, because it's actually mostly readable even from a non-technical standpoint, because most of it is just the same structure as we saw in this UI as well. So what I want to do from there is go ahead and just open up the Forge project for, this is actually an example from Atlassian. So, and like I said, I want to walk through basically how simple the setup is. And this is an example Forge Rovo agent that I got from the Atlassian site, just to kind of walk you through what that looks like. We have built a couple of Forge agents for our clients as well, and we use them internally through Forge. And essentially the process follows the same sort of thinking. You give it a name, a description, and a prompt. And this prompt is just the same structure of prompt that you might do for anything that you would create in the actual UI as I was showing before. Where this gets really cool is when you come down here, you can set your conversation starters, which is essentially the default options you get. So when you go to chat, it'll say, would you like to ask these default questions? And those will show up there. But then you have actions, and actions we also saw in the UI, but with Forge, those actions become things that we can write with software development and regular processes and use our development to actually take it to that further extent, right? So rather than just having a UI to set the actions, we can come down here, we're going to create an action. That action is going to use a function called get issues. So, this is essentially just a task that we're going to write the code to go fetch some issues and return it back. And we give it some label and some inputs. The really cool part about this is that from the perspective of this function, which you'll actually see is on this other page here, which I'm not going to really look at because it's beyond the scope of what I want to talk about for this, because this is not really Rovo specific. Beyond the scope of this this page here and just in that function, it's just regular software development. So the development teams that we probably already have in our organizations, or just technical consultants who might have some development background, can go and use regular software development practices, create the actions that you need to create the process you need to build. And then from here, we can attach that to the specific inputs and kind of AI insights and AI tools that we want to use from Rovo. So you'll notice that I have this input section, and inputs is allowing me to define what I expect the prompt from the user to contain. So this is basically me saying, I expect the user to pass me in a label. And that label is going to be how I know which issues to grab. So I might say the label to filter the issues by. And then I'm going to tell it that it's going to be some text, and then attach the function that I showed earlier. That is just a regular software development process. We built a function to do that. And now Rovo has all the information it needs. Rovo has its prompt, and Rovo knows from its prompt that it also, in order to accomplish this action, will need to get a label. So when I send a message to this agent now, it is going to be looking for a label in my text to put as the value here and pass into that function. So that's all I'm going to do to talk about kind of Rovo from a Forge perspective, from the code. I don't spend too much time there because I know that's kind of a little bit beyond the scope here, but I just wanted to show you how simple it is and how similar the setup is in Forge and in the UI. It's really the same tooling, but in Forge we get that extra ability to put our regular software development practice or regular software development tooling into practice and use that to accomplish the goals that we want to accomplish. All right, so going from there, we've talked about both of the ways to create a Rovo agent, but what we have not talked about yet are both of the ways to use a Rovo agent. So we've talked about chat, and we've sent the help me with the Smith case, and we kind of walked through how we use that agent from chat. But we also have been talking about we can use this in automations as well. So let's go ahead and move over to this automation here. This is the automation for a process that I built into that same legal team 1 project. And I'll show you this running in a second here, but I wanted to walk through the setup that we have for using an agent in automation. And actually, one thing I do also want to point out is I have a separate, let me go back to the page here for our browse agents. I have a separate agent here called Legal Request Prioritizer. If I view this agent, you'll notice that it's got its own prompt where it's acting as a tool to prioritize legal tasks. And I've actually come in here and very specifically told this agent to only respond with one word. And those one word responses are either high, medium, or low. The reason for that is because when we use an agent in automations, we need to make sure that the response that we get back is something that we can use easily to take action on, right? So if it's a long string of text, we don't necessarily know how to take action from there. But if I can tell my agent, hey, I just want you to return one word answer of what the priority should be, and these are the words you can choose from, then I've encoded exactly how I want that priority to be set. So anything with the contract being the high priority is the basic one, and then basically it goes from high, medium to low. So I've created that separate agent for my automations. And in the actual automation itself now, you'll notice that I have this use Rovo agent step. And in that use Rovo agent step, I can just select a Rovo agent. So I selected that legal request prioritizer and give it a prompt. And this prompt, using the smart values that already exist in automations. So basically these values are set by whatever issue I am calling this automation from. The automation is actually running when an issue is created. So whenever I create an issue, it's going to take that issue's summary and description and pass that as a single block of text to the legal request prioritizer agent. And that Rovo agent will then return a response that I'm going to be able to access in the same way that I access these values here. So this is the same tooling we use for any other automation inside of Jira or Confluence, but we're using it with Rovo now, where we can hand it this prompt and then expect that response to come back. And what I've done is created a branch for both the or each of the 3 levels of priority. So basically, if the value comes back from this agent response is now going to be set as the value that that agent gives back. So when it responds with the word high or medium or low, that is going to be the value here. So if that is equal to low, it sets the priority to that low priority. If it is medium, it sets it to that medium priority, and it does the same thing for high. So pretty simple setup, but it's using this AI concept and Rovo to create some pretty cool functionality where I can just use my natural language in the prompt of this agent to tell it how to understand the way to prioritize these issues. So I want to go ahead and kind of show you that running so we can see how that works. I'm going to create a new task here. It's going to be a request contract review. That's fine. So let's say need a signed contract for the Hernandez case. And go through here. I have to set some different values to make this work. Just kind of give it some values here to work with. And what we'll notice here is that the priority is currently set to medium. I'm not going to touch that. I'm going to leave it as medium. I'm going to go ahead and create this ticket. That is going to trigger the automation. And when I go view this issue, what we should see is, as long as I give it enough time here, let's give it a second, the automation should run and set this to a high because I gave it a, refresh it, because I gave it that automation saying if it has contract in the title, make it high. So there we go. Now I have that high priority being set based off of that automation. I didn't have to change that manually. Whenever I ran this, the automation hit, and it used the Rovo tooling to actually set that priority as high. So the power that this has for the customer in this case, right, is that a priority being set is generally an inconsistent task. As humans, we aren't always consistent in the way that we define a priority. And the nice thing about having Rovo handle that is that Rovo is going to be more consistent just by being programmatic, but it also has the natural language understanding of what the actual context of that issue is, right? So rather than worrying about each individual person having their own individual understanding of how that priority should be set, Rovo understands how that should be set and can handle that priority for us. Now, the other way that automations can be really cool is, like, let's say you need to get context on some requests. Like, another example here is you have a JSM project where people send in requests for different infrastructure needs in the organization. So, like, I need to restart this server, need to create a new node for this other process, whatever that looks like, right? You get those requests and you want to see if there are any duplicate requests or any similar requests, or kind of give some context to it. You could have a automation where whenever you create that request or somebody submits that request, it's going to create a new comment on that issue, for example, and that comment will have some context about maybe other issues that might be similar to it, or it can populate a custom field with a value based on if there are other issues that are related to it. Any number of different things that you could do, but now we can actually use AI behind the scenes in our processes as this additional force to take action on issues and give us context and help us move more quickly through that process. So it's really powerful, really cool thing to be aware of, and it really helps to kind of solidify AI's impact on a project or on a process, and allows us to get that benefit out of it. All right, so we've kind of talked through both the ways to create an agent and the ways to interact with an agent. Obviously, we've kind of talked through chat just by doing that. Chat as the general chat is also available here. We've talked through search a little bit. We've kind of seen most of the features of Rovo. And what that takes us back to is kind of filling in the overall context again. So let's go back to our presentation here and look again at this diagram and kind of where this fits into our overall cloud architecture. How does Rovo play a role in our organization? And as we've seen, both or all three of these areas, search, chat, and agents, kind of have their own niche that they fill for how to connect the organization together to create this complete picture of our cloud architecture. So search allows us to find information quickly. It allows us to find information not only in Atlassian products, but also in those external connections. And it allows us to use natural language to basically ask it questions that it can then respond with a list of sources and resources to get based off of that search term and be able to easily find that information. Chat allows us to get insights off of our data, both inside and outside of Atlassian products. So all those same connections, all that same data, chat is going to allow us to get access to that data and ask questions for insights or some new information based off of that data. It allows us to basically ask questions where the responses have context of our data. And agents allow us to create either more specified, more customized versions of chat, or it allows us to go even further and implement an AI teammate that can take action on our behalf, and either behind the scenes with automations or through chat can offload some of the responsibilities of taking those actions from our support staff or from our teams or from our admins and handle that. So what it allows us to do is then take those support teams, take those Jira admins, and they can focus on the more complex tasks while Rovo can handle the simpler tasks. And Rovo can make it easier to interact with your data because it gives you that insight and that context very quickly, and it provides that value right off the bat. Agents also goes even further with custom agents using Forge, and allows us to basically expand to infinite possibilities of what we can do. We can take our software development practices that exist for custom applications, these integrations and external systems on the right-hand side of this diagram, external data sources and other SaaS products that aren't already connected. We can pull those in. We can cause things to happen on those other tools. We can create side effects for other SaaS products. We can do whatever we need to do based off of the natural language understanding of Rovo, and access that once again either through chat or through automations. And that really fills out the full picture of how Rovo integrates with our cloud architecture and the value that it brings. I know we kind of talked through a lot of things here about Rovo and all the features and kind of looking through different screens for Rovo. So what I wanted to do is distill some of my tips and tricks around Rovo agents in particular and do a couple bullet points to kind of leave you with. And that's going to be a good way for kind of you to, as you're thinking about testing around with Rovo, let's say you get a trial started up and you want to know how to approach Rovo, how do I actually get started and move in that direction. So this slide is one that I like to go through just for, here's what you should be thinking about as the process for implementing a Rovo agent and some tips around doing that. So for a Rovo agent, you really want to start by understanding the problem and establish a measure of success. The really important thing here is that you don't want to be a hammer in search of a nail, right? You don't want to be having Rovo as the solution to a problem that doesn't exist. You want to be finding the problems that do exist and determining if Rovo is the right solution to solve that problem. So AI is a big buzzword. AI is this thing that everybody wants to implement into their process. And we want to see, AI everything essentially across every organization because that kind of shows that we're moving towards the future. But it's really easy to take that and turn it into solving every problem with AI, whether or not it should actually be solved with AI. We don't want to be doing that. We want to find the areas where it's actually helpful to use Rovo to solve that problem. And the second part of that first bullet point is to establish a measure of success. That is also very important. So when we look at a new product or a new tool from really anywhere, we're going to be looking at how do we actually measure the ROI? How do we measure the successfulness of that particular product and how it has integrated into our process, right? So we want to make sure that as we are looking at our implementation, we're saying, okay, so for this JSM implementation of Rovo, maybe I want to see less time spent on each ticket, or I want to see less time spent before the first response to each ticket. Whatever those metrics might be, establish what that measure of success looks like before you start implementing the Rovo agent. You are going to want to be able to understand how to measure whether or not you have done something that actually fits into the business in the right way before you start going too far down that path. Step 2 here is to experiment and explore how Rovo agents can help address the problems and reduce pain points. So this is where you just are experimenting. You're turning on a Rovo trial. You are basically finding a corporate sponsor, most likely for Rovo internally. You're finding a team that wants to build some Rovo agents. You're finding, any way that you can experiment with the tool. You're going to create a sandbox instance maybe and add a Rovo agent and see how that works. Or you'll just implement a Rovo agent and see over time if it actually affects things. This is where you're evaluating against the measure of success that you had in step 1, but mainly just experimenting and doing everything you possibly can. It's kind of like a brainstorming phase, building your Rovo agent to accomplish that goal. A really important thing to keep in mind in this process of step 2 is that you don't want to have a single agent trying to do too many things. It is really easy to see Rovo and see AI and think, okay, this is going to solve everything, and I can create one agent that's going to handle these 10 different things. So a big thing that I would point out as a thing to keep in mind as you're in this second stage of the process where you are experimenting with things is start small and expand from there. So start with a small implementation of a single feature that you can take and that single feature that it can handle gets to a point where it's really robust and it's working every time and that you've kind of completed that feature. Go from there to expanding that to add new features. Unlike regular software development or tools implementation or whatever space that you're in, without AI being central to it, those spaces, we can kind of implement a bunch of things at once or implement a single complex task all at once and expect to actually have some ways to test all of those different variables in that scenario a little bit better. With AI and with Rovo, if you have it do too many things at once, it's really hard to isolate each of those things and actually figure out what is the broken part of the process when things don't go exactly as you planned, right? So you want to start small and do small little chunks, and each agent should kind of handle one particular task at a time. Step 3 in the implementation process here is to connect with end users. This is where we are fully measuring against that measure of success in step 1. We are actually getting users in front of it, asking them to utilize it, finding all of the broken things that we didn't catch in our testing in phase 2. We are figuring out, how do they actually want to use it and maybe changing things based on that. But at the end of the day, we are seeing did we actually accomplish the goal we set out to do? Is that measure of success that I laid out actually happening? Am I reducing the time to that first response? Am I reducing time spent on tickets? What is actually looking like as users are interacting with that information? So between those three steps, that's kind of the very high level approach to implementing a robo agent. Of course, if you have some ideas about how you want to go about this, but you really want some help kind of going through that process, Valiantys and Glintech are happy to walk alongside with that process, and we'll talk about an offering that we have in a couple slides here for helping to do that as well. Kind of going from here, what I want to talk about is exactly that. It's Valiantys plus robo agents, or Glintech plus robo agents. This is where do we fit into the equation, and what can we offer, right? So we're talking about tailoring AI to the context of the tools we already use with Atlassian products, and Rovo filling that role. And where Valiantys comes into play is implementing that diagram that I showed you before. So that complete picture diagram where our whole cloud architecture is connected through Rovo and through Forge and all these different pieces. Kind of the entire picture being solved is where Valiantys comes into play. All of these individual pieces isolated are relatively easy to approach, as we've seen. Even building a Forge Rovo agent is relatively easy to approach, especially if you have developers on your teams already. The part of this that gets more complicated is tying it all together, creating the business case, and basically creating a full platform and suite of products using AI for your business units. That's where Valiantys and Glintech come into the equation. We can help you figure out how to structure your ways of working around AI and Rovo in a way that actually benefits your teams rather than just being an extra hurdle or just a way to check off a box to say you have AI, right? We want to actually create real value. We want to have that spread across the organization in a way that actually creates real change. So that's where we can come into the equation, and that kind of brings me to some next steps. And this is a QR code that goes to my LinkedIn, so I'd be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. It's a great way to reach out to me if you're looking for some more information. My email is also there, and it'll also be sent in the chat. So you can reach out to me. We have a Rovo Jumpstart offering that we can go through some time spent with your team and just create some proof of concepts, kind of do some experimentation. Basically, we're going to be going through steps 1 and 2, especially of that 3-step implementation plan, along with your team. We're going to spend maybe a week doing that, or however much time makes sense for your team, and leave you with a real business case for where Rovo fits into your organization or where it doesn't, because part of the value of that is also to find the areas where AI isn't the right solution or Rovo isn't the right solution. And there are probably going to be areas where Rovo is absolutely the right solution and solves that problem. We want to find those areas and focus on them. And this Rovo Jumpstart allows us to basically, get our hands a little bit dirty, work with your teams, and actually build some proof of concepts along with a real business case behind how Rovo can impact your business. So reach out to me if you have any questions about that. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Contact either Valiantys or Glintech, and we'll be able to help you with that process and kind of get Rovo implemented across your organization. You'll also notice if you do have any questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen there on Zoom. If you have questions, feel free to put them in there. I can answer them. Otherwise, thank you for attending, and hopefully you got some information out of this and you're able to understand a little bit better how Rovo can fit into your organization. I appreciate your time. If you have questions, you can leave them there. I'll wait a couple of minutes just to see if we have any questions and answer those, and we can kind of close out from there. Looks like I've got one showing up. Just a thank you there. All right, just give one more minute there for any questions that might be still out there. All right, so I have a question about if there is pricing on Rovo at the moment. So yes, there is pricing. Rovo is a separate product. It is a separate tool outside of your other Atlassian products. So it does have its own separate licensing. You can go to the site, the Atlassian site on Rovo pricing. It's based off of the user count, and you'll need to essentially, for all of the users in your instance, you would pay for that user count for Rovo, and that information is on the Atlassian site. But it is a separate product. So unlike Atlassian Intelligence that comes with your enterprise license, Rovo is a separate license that you'd have to pay for. All right, so another question that I've got is, have you run into any limitations in terms of the size of the input data Rovo agents can process? So the really cool thing about Rovo is that it does actually work off of like the data lake that Atlassian's building along with analytics, kind of like all these different pieces are tying together, right? And because Rovo is integrated on Atlassian servers and it is integrated with their processes, they have direct access to the data in ways that are faster than we can access it through the APIs. So what's actually been really cool to see with Rovo is that the speed of all the actions that you're doing with Rovo are pretty insanely fast for what it's doing. Like you can go onto the enterprise search screen, you can go to Rovo search and enter a query, and it'll search across like 10 different tools and still come back in less than a minute. And to me, that's kind of insane. It's really cool to see that happening. And it's because all of this processing that's being handled is handled in the cloud servers that are being handled by Atlassian. And so we don't have to worry about that infrastructure and kind of creating those limitations by our own size of infrastructure. The ability to have Atlassian handle that and have the speed be really quick is really nice. I'm sure we'll eventually hit limitations. Obviously everything has limits, but I've yet to run into any limitations with the implementations I have done with clients and internally. So I think it's just been really cool to see how much Rovo can accomplish. And same with Atlassian Intelligence, which is also very quick and runs off the same kind of processes. All right, so I am not seeing any other questions here. So thank you for attending, and hopefully we see you again for that Rovo Jumpstart or anything else with Valiantys or Blintech.